Italy and Georgia, folks, this weekend, Autumn Nation Series. These are two sides who should play each other more often. Georgia's been lingering on the fringes of some of the Tier 1 teams, and for a long time it's been Italy. You know, Italy for many years was languishing at the bottom of the Six Nations. Right now that spot is occupied by Wales. But Italy and Georgia, they've been not too far separated in the Rugby World Rankings for a long time, and in fact it's 10 against 12. With Wales between these two sides. So you feel like anytime Georgia get a chance against a side which is in a similar position towards the bottom of the Tier 1 sides, they really lift for that game. They feel hungry and they look to take that opportunity. But they've only played each other 3 times. So I feel like Italy and Georgia should be more of a common fixture. I don't know anyone that doesn't like Georgia. People give Italy a lot of stick in the comments whenever they get heavily beaten, but everyone loves the Georgians. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're a Georgian, Italian, or a pretty die-hard rugby fan, because this is not going to be the headline game of the weekend, but I reckon it could be a pretty tasty one. The squads have been named. We will go through some of the brief history between the sides, the stats, the predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Italy are hosting this time, remembering the last time they met, it was a Georgian win over in Georgia, 2022. Georgia won that one 28-19, which again was one of those kind of statement wins for where Georgian rugby is at and where they could be if given more opportunities. But Italy are back home for this one, and it's a fixture where the home side has always managed to get the job done. Italy are obviously coming on the back of a pretty disappointing match against the Argentinians last week. Argentina have been good this year, but with the Italians doing pretty good in the Six Nations, you would have thought that was a chance for them to push against the Italians, but they got really well beaten. So good chance for them to bounce back, but it's a different kind of game where last week they would have been looking up at a side above them in the world rankings, looking to push themselves up. This is one where they're looking down, trying to not be kind of overtaken by a side snapping at their heels. For the Italians, they have changed the front row with Fischetti, Nicotera and Ferrari getting a start this week. Those are the 3 guys who were on the bench last week, so it's a little bit of rotation. Nicolo Conone continues on in the second row, and then Dino Lamb comes in for Federico Ruzza, who's got a rib injury, so it's an unfortunate one for Ruzza, but a good chance for Dino Lamb, whose chances with Italy have been limited in recent times by his own injuries. Sebastian is still there at number 6. I never go with his surname because it gets flagged as a swear by YouTube's content policies. Michele Lamaro is still there at number 7. I was kind of hoping this might be a game where Zuliani gets a crack to start in the back row, but no, it is the captain who still leads the way. And with this potentially, being a meaningful game in terms of where these two teams are at, I can understand why they are fielding the starting captain. And Ross Vincent, he gets a start at number 8 with Lorenzo Canone also missing this one with an injury. Vincent is he's not the biggest looking number 8, but he's a good guy at getting forward in the contact. So we'll see how he's able to go up against what is a pretty good Georgian back. Alessandro Garbisi gets the nod at number 9, so he replaces Pedrello, who is not in the 23 for this one. And Paolo Garbisi, his brother, is at 10, so that's a brotherly 9-10 combo. These two guys should know each other's game pretty well. Menoncello and Brex are there in the midfield. They have been an absolute mainstay under Gonzalo Quesada, and Menoncello was just literally doing a bit of everything last week. He was giving away penalties, he was winning turnovers, making tackles, busting tackles, making run meters. He was doing the whole good and bad for the Italian side. He has been one of the standout performers for them in recent times, alongside Brex as well. So the Italian midfield is genuinely looking pretty classy. The wingers are still Ioane on the left, but Jacopo Trula is there on the right, so he replaces Lewis Liner, who is dropped for this one. And then Matt Gallagher comes in at 15 with an injury to Capuzzo, so he misses out as well. So a few injury-enforced changes for the Italian starting 15, and a couple just selection-based. Lucchese, Spagnolo drops to the bench, and Ciccarelli comes in as the tight head replacement. Favretto and Zuliano, the 2 forward replacements, and then 3 backs on the bench in Fusco, Marin, and Bertaccini. So a little bit of rotation from the Italians. And with the crowd at home, one would think there's a bit of pressure on them to perform after last week. Now, for the Georgians, they played the All Blacks 15 last week and a kind of non-test match, and likewise got relatively well beaten. there's a bit more meat in this game for them, as it's an actual test match, and it's against what I would consider, at least for them, as a rival in terms of their positions on the log, as I've mentioned. And you've got to keep in mind, the majority of the Georgian forward pack play their professional rugby in France, be it the top 14 or the D2, whereas the backs, there's fewer of them playing in France, but there still are a handful as well. There's only one change to the Georgian forward pack who played against that All Blacks 15 last week. The tight head Apsiari is up from the bench. Apologies for the pronunciation on that one. He was on the bench last week. He gets a start, but the rest of the forward pack, including the back row, is unchanged. I noticed there's no Beka Gorgadza for this one. I'm assuming he is out injured because I see he hasn't played since October. They have got Jalagonia there at number 8, though. He is a particular favourite of mine alongside Gorgadza. He looked at the stats from last week, man. 12 carries, 24 tackles, right up there and 63 metres, so he is certainly one to watch. The number 6, Ilya Spandurashvili, good at the breakdown last week, won a few turnovers but also conceded 3 penalties, so he'll need to be careful in that area. Of the Georgian backs who do play their rugby in France, the number 9 and captain Lobjanidze is one. They didn't kick a lot, the Georgians, last week, but when they do kick, it tends to be off 9, so he's the most likely guy to be putting up box kicks potentially for the backs to chase. Matkava is still there at 10. He's had a few heroic moments in a Georgian jersey before, but still hasn't been picked up by a club kind of in France or anywhere else abroad. He's still playing his rugby for Black Lion as far as I'm aware. There's a stable midfield and the outside backs likewise unchanged. Niniashvili is the kind of star of the Georgian backline. He is certainly one guy who does play his professional rugby in France. Led the way for the Georgians on the carry last week. They love feeding him the ball. 18 carries and 101 metres against that All Blacks 15. He is the danger man. If you can shut him down, you're a good way to shutting down the attacking threat of the Georgian back 3. Totoa, the veteran, is still there on the left wing. He just keeps rocking on. I think he played in the 2011 Rugby World Cup. Every time I see his name in the Georgian lineup, it brings a wee smile to my face. They've also got a couple of changes in the replacements, with a replacement tight head, a new number 19 lock replacement, and then Gala Aprasidza is the replacement halfback in the 21 jumper, who also didn't feature last week. For some stats, the Italians have a relatively lightweight pack. They are regularly below 900 kilos compared to the Georgian pack last week, I think weighed around about 930. So it's likely the Italians go into this one with a weight deficit, but it does mean they're able to keep the ball moving around a bit. They tend to not maul it a heck of a lot. Even the Georgians didn't maul it last week, though, to be fair, but that might be a weapon that the Georgians can try to utilize against the Italians. And also the Italians tend to play with very limited possession. And the Italians have also played a bunch of sides this year who are not tier 1 sides. They've played Tonga, they've played Samoa, they've played Japan. The only game they've managed to dominate possession was against Tonga. So even against the likes of Samoa and Japan, the Italians still live on less than 50% possession. But what that does mean is they're a team who is pretty good on the jackal. They tend to win a lot of turnovers, and if they can hit you on the break, they do have game breakers in their back line to punish. For the Georgians, last week their line out against the All Blacks 15 was not very productive, operating at 65%. If the Italians can disrupt the Georgian line out, that'll be a good chance to shut down anything before the forward pack can get their hands on it. Their tackling percentage was pretty high, and they didn't kick a lot. And as I mentioned, when they do tend to kick, they tend to kick off 9. So that could be one of the avenues that the Georgians look to attack the Italians in their back 3 if they kick them a fair bit of ball. Recent history between the sides, well, as I said, there's only 3 games. 2003, they played a game in Italy which the Italians won 31-22, which is not particularly convincing. Then in 2018, which is a lot more recent than 2003. What were you doing in 2003? Geez, I must have been still in high school. 2018, Georgia lost that one 28-17. That was also based in Italy. And then that most recent game, 2022, the Georgians got a famous win, 28-19, over in Georgia. So the games have tended to be around about 10-point affairs. They've not tended to be big blowouts. Average score 26-22 to the Italians. Although that being said, the Italians do go into this one as relatively big favourites with the bookies. The bookies are saying it's by 14. So 14 would be a big win in the context of the history between these two sides. It tends not to be that big. The Georgians really get up for playing the Italians. The Rugby Forecast algorithm is a little bit more conservative, saying the Italians by 9, which goes more kind of hand in hand with what the home sides have been able to do in the history of the 3 games between these sides. It is on at Genoa. Hopefully the crowd can get into that. We don't see that many test matches played there. It is a 2:40 in the afternoon local kickoff, which makes it 2:40 for me here in New Zealand in the morning. So I will, in all likelihood, be watching this one delayed, but I will have a look at it. Referee Ben O'Keefe from New Zealand is the referee. Fingers crossed he has a good game. You guys let us know your thoughts. Do you think, like the bookies seem to do, the punters, the Italians will put the Georgians to the sword? Or do you think the Georgians once again lift when facing a Tier 1 side as they look to stake their claim for more test matches of this kind of caliber? You guys let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stuff like Italy, Georgia. But yeah, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.